Hi there, and welcome to another Marvin Moments interview. This is your buddy Dave over at Mars X3D. And today we have my friend Allan Walker. He has a channel called Mars, the Second Genesis. Allan is a longtime 30-year expert in Photoshop and audio processing and the whole nine yards. And we're delighted to see him start his channel because Allan is offering X3D on his channel. And if you haven't already gone over there and subscribed, go and give him some love. So here he is, Allan Walker. Hi, Allan. How you doing today?
Hi Dave, nice to meet you face to face at last.
Yeah, finally, it's a little shocking, probably for both of us, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, a couple of old farts.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into, for example, Photoshop and all the things that led up to the point where you decided to start looking at anomalies on Mars.
Well, it started really, I would say 4 years ago, and I was in hospital and I was going through a bit of a rough patch, and my head wasn't really in the game at this point because I was really, I was because of the condition. Um, I was in the hospital. I was actually suicidal,
Hmm.
and I was looking at some videos on YouTube, and I came across one of Chris's videos,
Hmm.
and it was from Sol 1429. Um, and I didn't realise that you could download like the Mars images for free, and I didn't know at the time NASA actually allowed you to download them and use them. So watching the video, and I seen all these things in it, and I thought I need to have a look at this, and it gave me a bit of inspiration, and it got me out of the bad way of thinking I was in at the time. Although my health has improved a lot, um, I, I can no longer work, so I've got plenty of time to dedicate to the Mars stuff. So that day, I had my laptop in the hospital with me, and that's when I started getting into the anomaly hunting. And I was finding a lot of things, and I was finding these like it was like textures over the images, and that's when I discovered that the multiple levels of obfuscations NASA puts in their images. It's unbelievable. So I started finding a lot of stuff, and at the time I knew nothing about X3D.
Hmm.
Uh, I had a lot of experience with Photoshop. I'd get into digital photography when it had actually became a thing. And before that, I specialised in black and white photography. Now, I'm 54 years of age. I know I don't look a day over 29, but well, I'm
Good
54.
genetics. Good
Yeah,
genetics.
I was, came for good stock. Uh, so I'd been into photography when I was 8 year old. My mum and dad um, were they liked to drink and they liked partying. And at the parties, I was always handed the camera, and it was one of these wee um, 135 millimeter cameras. So that's what got me started into photography. And shortly after that, I bought a wee £20 second-hand Fujica camera, Fuji camera, which I had until I was 35. So it done me a
Hmm.
long time, and I started. I joined a camera club, and I started doing my own processing, the black and white processing,
Hmm.
and I can show you the very first photograph I ever took when I think it was 9. Um, I've still got it.
Well, fire away if
Um,
you've got it handy. And
yeah, I've got it here. Uh,
there we go. That's a great photo too.
yeah,
9 years old, huh? You captured
yep,
captured all those
yep.
codgers there on the bench with their
Yep.
stout. And
I've got
you mentioned
photo.
a moment ago that when you were looking at that YouTube video that of Martian anomalies, what was it about that caught your eye? I mean, obviously you saw or detected the obfuscation that NASA, JPL, Caltech puts on many, if not all, of the images. And I know there are many people out there who think we're complete whack jobs when we say things like this, but it's very easy to demonstrate, particularly in stereographic X3D, because they often don't get the planes correct. And so
Yep,
you have patches of image that are floating free in space or
yep.
sunk deep into the background. And, obviously they're not viewing it in X3D or in 3D of any form. And, but, the textures caught your eye. Tell me a little bit about that. What was it that flagged your interest about that?
The first thing is, well, when I started doing a wee bit of dodging and burning to see what I could bring out, um, I started getting this. It was like a texture,
Mhm.
and it was all over the image. So I thought, well, that can't be right. And one of the things that really caught my eye, and I knew it was an obfuscation, is they were a rock and there was something directly behind it, and you could see it was behind it. And the texture that was on this rock actually flowed into the thing behind it. So I knew that was a texture that had been, it's what's called bump mapping.
Mhm.
NASA's got a different name for it, but basically, you turn the image into a high contrast black and white to show Photoshop the actual curves and the tones, and it can wrap the texture, it distorts the texture around rocks and whatever to create that. Well, it's supposed to be seamless, but if you're trained in that sort of thing and you understand, you can recognize how it's done. And every single rock on Mars, basically the same texture is in the sand. So that's a dead giveaway. The other thing is, now, at some point when you've got a spare 2 minutes to yourself, look at any curiosity image with rocks in it and there's sand overlaid, right? That there is no wee pebbles in any of the rock. It's only in the sand. So they must have some sort of brush. They just dot it about. And I think and there must have been about 100 images I went through one night, and I checked every one of them, and I showed my wife, and you can see that there's no, the small pebbles, there's none of them sitting on the rocks. Every single one is sitting on sand.
Mhm.
So it must be like a brush they draw across it. Um, the multiple levels of obfuscations that are in the NASA images, and I'm going to I plan to do a video on this to show, like, there's uh, like, you've got that texture and it's pretty easy to get rid of. You blur it slightly,
Mhm.
that gets rid of that. But then you're into the next level of obfuscation, which they take an image and they superimpose another image. They composite that on top, and it's very opaque. It's very light. It's very slightly transparent, but it's enough to confuse the eye, so you don't
Exactly.
see. That's the next level of obfuscation.
So these are
Uh,
the types of things that, of course, an average person who isn't a longtime expert in Photoshop like yourself uh, it would bypass them entirely. And in fact, the average person looking at any of the images from Mars would just say, hey, there it is. It's just a photograph, and those are just rocks and sand, and that's it. There's nothing there. And one of the things that I've found very useful about your channel, Allan, is the tutorial aspect and the way that you have pointed out different aspects of processing and what NASA is doing, and kind of peeling the covers back, the curtains back, so the average person can have a little better understanding. Because I think for most people, what you're talking about at the moment is pretty arcane. They're going, what are we talking about? And I think we can sum it up by saying that apparently NASA, or whoever runs NASA, has a managed agenda in place to keep the truth about Mars and from other locations that we've sent cameras to absolutely shielded from the general public. Now, that said, they still mess up. And there are still things that are clearly anomalous in nature and bear further looking at, because there are just too many. There are just too many for them to completely obliterate every image, and it is a taxpayer-funded program. So they can't just issue all this garbage 100%. You know, there's stuff that leaks through. And I also personally feel that there are insiders in NASA who are anxious for disclosure and are allowing items to slip through the process. Now, before I go on too long with a monologue, it's clear that all of us weirdos that are involved in this pursuit have different perspectives on what we consider to be anomalous. We have people with extremely vivid imaginations who see aliens and flying saucers in every single rock and pebble. And we have people that see miniature Martians everywhere they look. And
No, they're not under every rock and pebble. They work for NASA.
well, yeah, that could be. And but you know, this is why very early on in my particular perspective, I got really tired of the people who are jumping up and down saying, oh, look, this is a UFO, or look, this is this or that, you know, and assigning all kinds of meaning to things. It's a gigantic Rorschach test. And as I got into it further, I realized I don't want to show things that everybody can use as a springboard for their imagination. I want to use 3D processing, and I want to use non-fractal as much as possible, with non-fractal just being the mathematics of intelligent agency. And so that the evidence itself is what you're looking at, and it doesn't require any interpretation from anybody. Analysis is helpful and required at times, but interpretation is up to you. And I know that you have a different perspective on Mars anomalies than I do, so I'm interested to learn more about what you see, why you see it, why you consider it anomalous, and maybe show us a couple of examples.
Yeah, sure. Well, my job, my main trade is a master carpenter, and I used to design and make arts and crafts furniture for a living. And I could show you a couple of examples of this. I don't actually do it any longer because of my health. I'm not hunting for business or anything like this, but I think it's important to show you maybe a couple of examples.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Maybe you know, just give a real quick overview, and then let's dive on to Mars.
Yep.
Fire away.
You see it?
Oh yeah, very nice.
Right. Well, this sort of thing here, I'm discovering all over Mars, mainly where Percy is. And this was an Egyptian type.
That's really
I was
neat.
commissioned to do. Now this is the sort of stuff I'm finding. I actually found something similar to this the other day there on Mars.
I agree. We found any number of items and anomalous pieces that appear to be Egyptian flavored anyway. I mean, we see things that look like hieroglyphics. We find innumerable pyramids, and we find other items as well. So I think you're spot on with that.
This one's from Sol 155, and I've got it in stereo photo maker here, and I'm zoomed in a wee bit. And if you look at the bottom of this rock, you can see some sort of carving or markings. It's not just the rock, it's that there is something there. Now, what NASA are doing is they're taking the shadows on the rock. Say there's a lot of carvings or hieroglyphs or something on the rock. They're taking the shadows out and then they're overlaying this texture, but they're missing some of it, and they tend to miss it at the bottom of the rocks, or where they really miss things is, see, just when the different planes interact, like there,
Mm-hmm.
they miss bits. See, like that round corner there.
Yeah. And I think for many people, if you're new to the channel and you don't understand X3D, there are links down below in the description where you can view or read tutorials that'll teach you the process in just a couple of minutes, and it turns your monitor into a giant ViewMaster. So go ahead, Alan.
Right, this one here was, I was actually shocked what I seen in this. There's quite a lot to this image, basically. Now, this is the main anomaly here. Now, if you look at that, I would say that's been some sort of animal, maybe a tail, a mouth, a couple of eyes, and it's been sitting on some sort of plinth. When
Yep.
you zoom in here, you can actually see. Now, I would say that's maybe wood or something similar. But they have put a texture over it. I don't believe all this is wood. I think this is metal just with a texture over it. The other thing, what they do, one of the obfuscation things they do, if you look at this here, I'll zoom in a wee bit, you can actually see metal in here, and what they do is they fill it in to make it look like rock, but it's almost like a cookie cutter sort of thing. It could also be hieroglyphs or some sort of carving. That there does not, especially this piece here, is definitely not part of a rock. And this piece here, I believe, is a structural beam. If you look at the end of that, you can see there is a cross, something like a structural beam. Now, I don't know if you notice this, but see the 3D-ness of this is out of whack. Now, I thought at first I had it the wrong way round, but no, there's something not right with this. And as you say, they do make a lot of mistakes. It just doesn't look right. I don't know what it is, but they've done something. And they've got a tendency to shoot into the light, and any photographer worth their salt will not shoot into the light. It's a number one no. You never do that. You always have the light to your back.
You think,
But
yeah. And you know what jumps out of that picture for me is not only what you're finding there, what might have been a statue, but that gigantic cube sitting there with all those perfect right angles behind it. I mean, that's a dead giveaway for intelligent agency. So
yeah,
we're looking at archaeological ruins, if you're at all familiar with seeing how
yeah.
they've eroded. And so that's a great find. That's very compelling.
There is. Let me see here. one more. This a wee. This is very small. I had to enlarge it a bit, but you can see that there is not. I don't know what it is. It could be metal, but that point, rock doesn't normally come to a point like that. Now, see one of the things I was saying about the texture. Have a look at that there and the way it goes onto the rock. See the way that runs, that texture goes onto the rock. It seems to flow from the rock into the ground. Well, that's a bump map texture. That on the rock is not there because you can see the way it actually flows into the ground. Well, that wouldn't happen. So all this here, in my opinion, is just garbage. But this is the main anomaly. Now, we're maybe looking at a piece of metal that's been sheared off or something. But that to me, it could be a tube, a pipe, it could be anything really. But if you look at the shape of it, the way it comes round, I don't think a rock could do that.
Yeah, there's a lot to recommend it as being anomalous. There aren't any really clearly non-fractal angles except for perhaps that rectangle around the that overhanging piece that's sticking out like a tongue. And that's very suspicious because it's all the same width and you've got the right angles going around in a hole. And so, yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I would tend to say, yeah, that's anomalous. And then look down to the right of it and there's another perfectly square block sticking up out of the sound. So, how many clues? Yeah, how many clues does a person need to say, you know what, we're on an archaeological site here. These are relics and ruins that have been badly eroded over who knows how many millennia.
It's the sheer volume of bits and pieces you're finding, and I believe we're only getting a very, very small amount. I believe, right, what I think NASA are doing is these are ruined buildings. And if I wanted to hide them, what I'd do is I'd take the ground plane and raise it up. I believe what NASA are doing, say that's a house, the roof, right? And it comes down, we've got the doors and the windows, and it's sitting on the ground or a wee bit of hill or whatever. I think what they're doing is they're putting a CGI ground and they're raising it and they're allowing just the roof part to peek out and they're putting a texture over it. So most of the stuff we're seeing is actually below that false ground plane. And most of the things we are seeing in Jezero Crater look like roofs. I mean, the amount I have found is unbelievable. And we're seeing like mouldings and like the picture I showed you with that fire surround, the, you know, you're seeing all this sort of stuff, and it is very reminiscent of Art Nouveau style. And that's what my eyes is kind of tuned into. So that's what I actually see. And these are the things I'm finding. So, what with going into see the images, I look for things that, well, you look for what you know, your non-fractals, square blocks, triangles. I see a different thing, and that's good because then people who are into X3D, if they watch your channel, they're getting a different thing on my channel, and that's good because there's only myself and you that really do it full time. My channel, I think I've done two videos for the channel get restarted again. There has been 2D, the rest's been X3D.
Tell us a little bit about that, if you feel like it, Alan, because your channel mysteriously disappeared for
Yeah,
a
well,
number of weeks.
I knew nothing about it until I got an email from you saying your channel's disappeared. Somebody had emailed you saying what happened to Alan's
Hmm.
channel. It's disappeared. Well, I knew nothing about it. So I went on, sure enough, it shut down. And I went into the Flickr site I had set up. That had gone as well. And there were other things which I'm not going to go into, but that the things related to the channel were gone. I don't know what happened, but at first I thought that the thought of starting from scratch again was a wee bit daunting.
No kidding.
Uh,
That's especially after losing all that massive amount of information and data that you
yeah,
had,
I
and
had
that.
spent 4 years
Mhm.
converting all the Curiosity raw files from Analyst Notebook, and I was going to share them with the community.
Yeah. I think
As
too, possibly, and I'm just conjecturing here that, but possibly one of the reasons your channel was targeted is because of your tutorials that you were showing people not only how to detect the obfuscation that NASA's putting in there, but how to develop their own images from the analyst's notebook and various other things that I think they would prefer the general public didn't know. Um, I know it's
make
very,
it as
very useful
apparent
to
as
go
possible.
in. Oh, yeah. Going into the analyst's notebook, that can be daunting.
Oh,
It's
the
interesting, though.
first,
I have a colleague from the past. His name is Rami. He's lives in Israel. A very fine anomalist, finds some beautiful anomalies, but he refuses to cite his work. And so, consequently, if I happen to see something that he's shared or one of his fans have shared that I think is worth extracting the three-dimensional information from, it's a bear to track it down. And, usually the best I can do is get the sol number, but then there are 3, 4, 500 thumbnails from every sol, and I need to identify that. But with all that said, I was checking on something he found recently in 2789, and I was looking uh, through the thumbnails very patiently, one at a time, 340 of them, and identified just another half dozen great anomalies that nobody had found or looked at. And so I thought, well, okay, that's cool. I mean, that was worth the hassle. But I think when people lose their fear of the analyst's notebook and the data that it contains, that there'll be a quantum leap forward in the anomaly genre. Now, my friend Jimmy Roberts over at The Real Jimmy Roberts 1 early on spent about 6 months learning the metric system that they apply to the NavCam and sometimes the HazCam, sometimes the MassCam images, and got that down. And he's the go-to guy now on metrics. And that's something I hope to pursue at some point in the future. But, so many of the anomalies, people assign sizes to things that, they think are gigantic, which are actually only inches across.
yeah,
And and NASA, I believe, purposely withholds metrics from the MassCam images because those are the ones that get published, and they don't want people, I think, knowing exactly what's going on with the sizes of things that they're viewing. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. What else have you got in your magic pockets there for some recent anomalies? Anything else? And while we're doing this, let me remind you all that you can contact Alan through his channel, or you can contact me at marsx3d at gmail.com if you have anomalies that you'd like for us to take a look at. Well, there's no guarantee they're going to get published, but we are definitely interested. And if you can point us in the right direction, and if we find something worthy of sharing, you of course will get full credit. And it is kind of fun to see your finds in stereographic 3D. I know that's fun for me. I love doing it. But anyway, what did you dig up there, Alan?
Right, well, this one is from Sol 136, and boy, this was quite a big section of the panorama. And what I'm going to do, I'll zoom in and I'll pan through. So the first piece is, I'll put it in the middle of the screen. This part here at the upper part, you can see this is some sort of mechanical thing or whatever. That to me is not a rock, and the thing behind it, it's got a wee. You just look at it, you can clearly see that's not that's not a rock. And this piece in the centre here, this part that looks like a shark's tooth. If you look at it, it's symmetrical. See, one of the obfuscation techniques NASA's using. See, if you look at all this brown in amongst the blue
Mm-hmm.
on the ground, I believe all this is blue, and they're putting this to break it up. Now, if you, I'll go a wee bit further where you can see it clearer. If you look at this part here on the bottom of the screen,
Mm-hmm. The lower right corner.
yep, you can see where there's lines, brown lines around this blue. You see it here,
Yeah.
and that is one thing. It's not multiple bits, but NASA would have us believe that this blue is like small rocks, but it's part of something larger. And it's only when you study it, and that's what I believe you've got to do is study it. Don't just, you've got to zoom in, look at it in X3D and study it, and you will see what the shapes are. Now, this mess here, in 2D, you can't make head nor tail of it, but when you look at it in X3D, you can see there is something quite mechanical about this mess.
And that's an important point I think many people need to understand, is that when you're viewing something stereographically, your mind, first of all, will assign better order to the image and more clarity to the image, because this is how you normally view. A flat image often makes no sense at all, but when you look at it in 3D, suddenly it makes sense. So go ahead, Alan. Sorry for the interrupt. I like those two little centers, cylinders, almost dead center to the right of the round rock. You have two little cylinders sitting on top of a rock that look very unnatural.
That there, I think, could be like what I think is part of the Martian culture is I believe they're a lot bigger on art than what we are, and they've got sculptures everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Their buildings are all sculpted, and they're not two buildings alike. They look very. Some looks quite technical, and other ones look quite cartoonish. If you know what I mean, they're quite unusual. Um,
I think
Obviously,
that they had access to stoneworking technology that has eluded
oh,
us, much like the amazing stonework we find at Pumapunku and other megalithic sites around the world, and the Mayans, with their fabulously intricate glyph carvings and temples. I mean, they were doing something with the rock where they could almost shape it like Play-Doh. it seems, or stamp it. And but on Mars, you're correct. We find a very wide spectrum of artistic expression, both on a small scale and on a megalithic scale. And it's clear that the civilizations that pre-existed its destruction were master stonemasons.
Yeah. Now, it's important as well, viewing in X3D lets you see things you can't see in 2D. Now, if you look at this thing dead centre on the screen, it looks like you would swear that is an eagle. If you look at that, the eye, the yellow beak, but when you look at that in X3D, you can see that piece there is in front of this.
Yeah, case in point, there's a colleague of mine who lives in England who has a very popular channel, very large channel, and he's been on Ancient Aliens and made appearances. And a year or two ago, he ran across what he called an elf bearing a sword and all of this stuff. And he made a video all about it. And he never apparently bothered to look at it in 3D. And of course, as soon as you look at it in 3D, you see that it's just, they're all different rocks on different planes. It's not one piece. It's not a fossilized elf. It's a bunch of rocks that make a picture. And I think that's also why many anomalists, you notice that we arrange our firing squads in circles in this community, dislike the stereographic movement, because it debunks a significant portion of their closely held and dearly beloved anomalies. And, for me, I just want the truth. If something's pareidolia, then call it what it is. There's more than enough anomalous structures on Mars to keep us busy for the rest of our lives. And but anyway, I'm just kind of rambling on. Well, as our time is getting close to being up here, Allan, what is there anything else you'd care to share with us in terms of images?
Just this wall. There's a wall. That to me says it all. A brick wall. You can clearly see that's divided into segments.
Yeah, and of course you'll have people that say, "Oh, well, that's just fissuring in the rock, and it's a natural geologic formation." But it's strange how the lines are so parallel, and how the vertical
Yep.
lines are
If you
so.
look at
Uh-huh.
all the bundles of rocks they have, if you notice, they're all parallel with one another. As if if you see different structures that have decayed over decades on Earth,
Sure.
you'll always see the floors. They'll all be parallel to one another. And it's the same with the rocks on Mars. Now, how do you explain that? It's ruins. That you've got to be a bit of a detective as well. Like, see this at the back here? If you look at that in X3D, you can see there's something below the sand. See the sand dunes, or so-called sand dunes. You can clearly see the structures, and they have put a sand over that. But because they have bump mapped it to what was there, it still has the original form. So although you don't see the texture or the proper colour, you're seeing the form. And a lot of the anomalies that I do show this, that to look at the sand.
I think, Allan, that any rational, common sense person, if they look at any number of these things that we're talking about and are not told that they're Mars, would instantly assign an archaeological origin to them, that these are ruins and these are artifacts. And for some reason, because it's on Mars, people just freak out and say, "Oh, no, they're just rocks. They're just rocks." And but I've been on I'm an amateur archaeologist, and I've been on 3 expeditions to the Middle East. And I don't have the eyes, the training, or the expertise that a true archaeologist has. But in the company of some of the best archaeologists in the world, I watch them bend down in the dirt and pick up something that looks like a pebble, or doesn't look significant at all. And they'll say, "Oh, this is part of a femur from a 10-year-old child," or "This is a piece of pottery from the late dynastic period," or something. They're able to look at things that to us look like dirt and rocks and pebbles, and they instantly see and understand what they are. And when you're an anomalist and you spend literally thousands of hours looking at thousands of images over many, many years, your eyes become attuned in just that way. And so I understand why people may look at, say, for example, your images today and think these guys are daft. Those are just rock. That's sand, and those are rocks. What are the next? And they want to switch over to their Power Ranger videos and feel happy again. But the point being is that what we find on Mars is a vast archaeological record of an ancient civilization that was wiped out in an unbelievably violent global catastrophe. And we're going around, we're picking through the remains, and that's what Allan and I are doing, and our colleagues as well, to put these in front of you and just ask you to look at the evidence. Just look at it. You don't have to accept it. You be the judge. If you think it's daft, if you think they're just rocks, fine. Move along. For those of you with the eyes to see and certainly the ability to view X3D, I think your horizons are going to expand very significantly. We've been talking to my friend Allan Walker today, who has the channel Mars, the Second Genesis, where he's not only presenting valuable tutorials to show you how to do many of the things which have been too arcane for us to undertake in the past, he's also presenting his own X3D anomalies in full stereographic 3D that are well worth viewing. We've discussed today some of the techniques NASA uses to hide or obfuscate using sand and what we call rockifying or texturing, different things to hide them in plain sight, and how to kind of peel back those layers and begin to see for yourself exactly what we're dealing with on our sister planet of Mars, and indeed on the moons and planets and asteroids and even comets that we've been to, where everywhere we go, we find the mark of intelligent agency. And that always leads to my primary belief that life is the prime directive. So this is your buddy Dave over Mars X3D, our guest, Allan Walker. Thank you so much, Allan. Very nice to meet you and to talk with you today. And best of luck on your channel, Mars the Second Genesis. We just ask that those of you who haven't seen it yet, by all means, go over and check it out. I'll include a link down below. And give it a look. Give it, try 2, 3, 4 episodes and see what you think. And give him some love. Subscribe. And as in all of us, I'm a work in progress. Allan is a work in progress. All our colleagues, we're a work in progress. And as we devote our thousands of hours and years of time into this, the product continues to improve, and we continue to zero in on some really significant anomalies that should change your worldview. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. We're going to say goodbye for now and see you at the next MARVIN Moments. Bye-bye.